Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City of Santa Barbara Harbor Commission regular meeting for March 21st, 2024. I'm John Steadman. This is the Vice Chairman, Adam Stanwyck, and our immediate chair, past chair, the Honorable Merritt McCrae. Nico, can you execute a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Anderson is absent. Commissioner Ford?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson? Here. Commissioner Stanwyck?
Here.
Commissioner McCrae?
Here.
Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
And Chair Steadman.
Here. Director Wiltshire, any changes to the agenda?
Chair Steadman, none tonight. Good to go.
Excellent. I have a good feeling about this, at least compared to a month ago. Any general public comment?
Yes, Chair Steadman, we do have two speaker slips that were submitted. The first is Patrick Boyle, and the second will be Chris Voss.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've never been in front of this commission before. I was here last month for that long one.
Oh, okay.
Normally people come up here and complain about things, but I came up here to thank you guys for doing what I hope is the right thing with regard to the Ledbetter renovation of the restrooms by taking public comment and taking our ideas. I'm one of the swimmers. I wrote some of those letters to the News Hawk and Ed Hat. And I wanted to say thank you. You guys did a great job. That's all.
Well, we appreciate that, Patrick.
Next, we have Chris Voss.
So this isn't quite the appropriate forum for my comment, but my name is Chris Voss, and I'm president of the Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara.
Is your speaker on, Chris?
It sounds like it to me. You guys, that work for you? I can hear it being amplified.
Don't worry, you still have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, Chair Steadman. My comment today has to do with Assembly Bill 2220, which has some pretty bad characteristics. Representative Bennett put it forward and is carrying it on behalf of Oceana. He's from Ventura, and it plans to criminalize the incidental take of giant sea bass and white sharks, and will restrict even further the area available for the set gillnet fishery, of which there's very few participants. In addition, it will enable the Department of Fish and Wildlife to put observer coverage on any fisheries deemed necessary, which is technically the case anyway right now. I don't know what the objective of the legislation does over and above what's already allowed in order to get at questions like bycatch associated with fisheries. So it is unfortunate this legislation has been put forth. The timing's horrible in relationship to a process that's already been underway with the set gillnet fishermen and the Department of Fish and Wildlife and Oceana, who's been a part of this collaborative effort to reduce bycatch through small regulatory changes to the set gillnet fishery. So we have a number of participants in that fishery in the Santa Barbara Harbor, and we'd prefer that this legislation just be dropped, and chances are it will be, because it's being recognized as pretty ill-conceived by a lot of the people in the process. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Did we have any online?
There are no hands raised, Chair Steadman.
Okay, excellent. Vice Chair?
Great. Thank you, Chair Steadman. Yeah, we'll move on to the work group reports. And the budget work group met on March 14th. We met with the Waterfront Department, Commissioner Cohen, Commissioner Anderson, and I, and we reviewed everything, revenue, expenses. Really, revenues, the big ones, the slips and parking, and predominantly we had a discussion over visiting slips and the different rates between some of the larger vessels, the smaller vessels. In regards to expenses, really the operating budget and the big change was the insurance, and specifically the allocated costs associated with that. What do we actually get from being insured, as well as the large deductible that we'd have to pay to actually file a claim. We talked about that a little bit. along with some of the other capital improvements, deferred maintenance and deploying the capital, some of the big projects that we have going on, like the Marina 2, 3, and 4 being redone, as well as the rock revetment wall. Also, as well, we have a tentative meeting to kind of reevaluate some other questions we have on the calendar for the 11th of April. And also, we just want to reiterate that the last 2 years, we wanted to have the commission be able to kind of discuss and collaborate before we went right to vote. I know last year, Commissioner McCray had a few things that he wanted to change, and just gauging on what we did the last 2 years, we wanted to have at least one more meeting for the full commission, just kind of weigh those things, because those opinions and those changes are very important. And so we wanted to have that special meeting that we have scheduled for the 24th, which will kind of include the entire commission to weigh in on everything before we bring it to vote. So that's going to be kind of scheduled for the May meeting, but at least we'll have 2 more times to kind of discuss, once as a work group and once as a full commission before that. That's the budget work group. Commissioner Cohen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Okay.
No, that was very thorough. Thanks.
Great. Sure, yes.
Regarding the big capital items, would they be financed completely through reserves and the given fiscal year's revenues, or will it require outside financing through sort of the state of California's loan program for waterway improvements? I mean, I think there was a couple of big ones you said.
There was, yeah. We actually talked about some of them, and I believe we spoke about the opportunity to fund it through some debt, and also the fact that some of these are multiple year projects.
Right, so will they be debt financed, or will they be?
This wasn't an agendized item to talk about the budget or
Okay.
capital, and so I just want to make sure we align that. We can talk
Yeah.
about it at the budget work group, and then we'll talk about that at the April 24th
Okay.
budget meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we discussed those projects and just kind of on a multi-year basis. Great. And also, I believe the strategic planning work group met, and Commissioner Ford would like to talk on that.
Yes, I would, but where are my notes? I seem to have, where are they?
Commissioner Nelson can.
Yeah, I got it.
He can help me.
No, I don't, he's always got something to say. Hello. I have a few notes here. As I said, the strategic planning work group did meet. We met on Wednesday, March 13th, and Commissioners Stedman, Nelson, and I met with Director Wiltshire to discuss the possible challenges, the different perspectives, and potential outcomes of a strategic planning process. And we shared, kind of reviewed some of our initial aspirations, which hopefully underscored all the reasons that this rose to the top after the Harbor Commissioner's January prioritization setting meeting. Director Wiltshire presented a draft of a waterfront goal-setting document, which listed activities, initiatives that he and his staff are working on that will be part of the upcoming budgeting process. And he also referred the work group to other documents and shared with us the local coastal land use plan and the 1996 Harbor Master Plan. After that, our discussion took another turn, and we focused on what a framework or an approach, a master plan, a roadmap, what it might look like, no matter what you call it, and its potential to enhance the work of the waterfront and of the commission. When it became clear that we agreed on a number of points, but also differed in a number of areas, we decided that our next meeting would entail a sort of brainstorming ways to engage the entire commission in the first stage of addressing, most importantly, the scope of what a plan would entail, and also expectations for what the process and the content would be. We also had the understanding that if we did a full planning process, it could be quite costly. And so we agreed to also, before our next meeting, review the documents that were shared with us, just to better understand what already exists and what does not, in hopes of us working toward the creation of a plan which is efficient and thoughtful and useful to both the commission and the waterfront. Commissioner Stedman or Commissioner Nelson,
Nope.
any further comments, thoughts?
I have one question, comment. Did you have an opportunity to distribute the local coastal plan to the entire commission? Are we going to do that? Or maybe discuss it?
We can do it.
as an
It's
item?
online and available. I'd sent it out to the members after we had met of the strategic plan, but we didn't.
Right.
We didn't talk about sending it out to everybody. I certainly can. It's available. I'm assuming that most have access to it.
Okay. All right, so it's pretty easy to find.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Ford.
Thank you.
Would any other commissioner like to speak on behalf of any work group? Great. Move on to the consent calendar. Mr. Lopez, can you please read item number 1, approval of the minutes?
Yes, this is item 1, approval of the minutes. That Harbor Commission waive further reading and approve the minutes from the regular meeting of February 15th, 2024.
I'm sorry, I meant to pull this off the consent calendar.
Sure.
I had talked with, there were on motion number, there was a little bit of clarification on motion number 5. I think Nico has what the corrected language was, but here it says that it was as described in the staff report, and it was actually, my motion was, or the motion that was approved by the commission was as it was written by the work group, and it was also to send that motion to city council. So there was a little bit of clarification on that. I don't know if it's appropriate to put notes in, but on motion number 2, my understanding when I made that motion, and I thought that was that the recommendation would go to city council, and city council was not in that language. I guess when it was read back, I missed that that language didn't, I don't know exactly what happened, but my recommendation was that it go to city council. So those were just 2 comments on that.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, we can, so we, Nico and myself went through the meeting and for the motion number 2, the motion in the minutes was written exactly as it was read by yourself and by Nico, so that one was verbatim. And the motion for number 5, the original motion was Cohen and Anderson to approve recommendation 6, 9, 10, 11, 22 as described in attachment 5 of the staff report. What was actually said was that plus and forward to city council as they were written by the work group. So we could add that to the corrected minutes. And you could potentially make a motion on that to approve them with that verbiage added to motion number 5.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, I would ask that that change be made to the minutes. If possible, to put a comment, I don't know if that's appropriate, but when I watched my video of it, I did say on motion 2 that we recommended that it go to city council, but I don't want to get into I don't want to get too ticky-tacky here. But if we could at least amend motion number 5, that would make me happy.
Yeah, we can do that. And just to touch base on the motions, we capture the motions as they're said, because we typically, we're required to do action minutes. And so we really don't capture comments during deliberation, because that would kind of lead to a lot of interpretation. And so Nico and myself try and capture the motions and actions themselves as purely as they were put forth.
You mean when you're reviewing the tape after?
Right, when Nico's compiling the minutes for the meeting. So we'll get the motion as it stood, and that motion will end up in the minutes, and all of the deliberation and conversation leading up to that will not.
Just to clarify, though, I did watch the videotape, and on motion number 2, I don't want to belabor this point, but when I said the motion, I did say, I recommend that we send to city council the following recommendation. I don't want to belabor it, but I did go back and watch the tape to see what I said. But let's just move forward, and I'm happy with correction on motion number 5, and I'd make a motion that we approve them with that correction.
So are you making a motion?
Sure.
Well, doesn't it say the city council has the ability to, as is being recommended, authorize the city manager to limit cruise ship passenger landing services?
It does. My
As
motion,
is being recommended.
yes, but my motion was not that to implement, it's not clear who's doing the implementation in there. I had thought about this beforehand, so when I saw it, it kind of jumped out at me, because, we've constantly, or we've been, not constantly, but we've been told we don't implement policy, so I was very careful with my words, that we were recommending that city council implement and enforce the annual capacity limit. That was how I understood it. We don't need to get into the weeds here. I'm fine with moving forward, but at any rate, but I believe really careful to advise city council, because that was my understanding. We don't implement policy, we advise city council, right? So.
Commissioner McCray?
Yes. As I recall, we didn't recommend a specific number, just that they consider it.
I'm sorry?
We did not recommend a specific number of cruise ship visits per year.
We recommended, this is verbatim what we recommended. Just at the beginning of it, I had said that we recommend that city council implement. But I think we're not talking about motion 2. We're not going to, so that was the language that was I approved.
Okay, is that a motion then to approve the consent calendar with the change to motion 5?
To motion 5, yeah. That's
Second.
my motion.
We have a second from Commissioner Ford.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Cohen, seconded by Commissioner Ford, to approve the consent calendar with a change to motion 5 of item 4. And I'll read that out just so it's clear. So the motion will now read, Commissioners Cohen, Anderson to approve recommendations 6, 9, 10, 11, 22 as described in attachment 5 of the staff report, and forward to City Council as they were written by the work group. Okay. Commissioner Anderson is absent. Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Ford?
Yes.
Commissioner McCray? Yes. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanwyck?
Yes.
Chair Stedman?
Yes.
And that passes unanimously with Commissioner Anderson absent.
Great, moving on to new business.
Okay, very well. Item number 2, new business, Nico. Unless there are any public comments.
It's for later.
So this is item 2, 5-year lease agreement with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Recommendation, Harbor Commission recommends City Council approve a 5-year lease agreement with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for office space located at 113 Harbor Way at a rent of $1,505 per month.
Good evening, Chair Stedman, Commissioners, members of the public. My name is Cesar Barrios. I am the Waterfront Business Manager. Today I bring to you a proposed office lease agreement with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA. So just to begin, in addition to their vessels that they keep in the harbor, NOAA's Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary currently maintains 2 offices and storage spaces with a total of 452 square feet in the Waterfront Center building, which is the 113 Harbor Way, where the Maritime Museum is located. And they recently approached the department wishing to extend their existing lease agreement by another 5 years. This is something they commonly do. They've been with the city, or they've been our tenants since 1997. We agreed to those terms and conditions of this new lease, and I'll bring this to you for consideration. Again, the NOAA, they've been here since 1997. They bring significant value to the harbor. Being a federal agency, they provide, they add the value to having a federal agency, especially with vessels, which facilitates grant funding as well as funding for the dredging. And having the Coast Guard cutter, for example, as well as NOAA vessels, has a presence of federal agencies in the harbor, which it helps in that process, given that we are such a small city considering the robust budget that the federal agencies have which is in the billions of dollars that we advocate every year for the dredging. With that, here you have the terms. There's a 5-year lease agreement. The base rent will be $1,505 per month. It's roughly $3.19 per square foot. There's no percentage rent affiliated with this lease, and also we don't have a rent adjustment to their terms. Like I said, they've been with the city, at least they've been our tenants since 1997. In 2013, they moved the majority of their offices to UCSB, but they kept these 2 offices that hold executive management as well as research in the Waterfront Center. And that is my brief presentation on this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Cohen?
What was the thought process in not putting in a percentage increase over the 5 years?
So to give you some background, as far as NOAA, being the only agency that's a federal agency that we have as a tenant, the way we do business with them as far as the lease agreement is very different compared to anyone else. I mean, pretty much we sign their agreement, and based on, and this is a stated process that is not just, the state is subject to similar terms. So, of course, we do have a say. We can choose not to have an agency like NOAA at the harbor, but we understand the value that they bring to the harbor. And with that, there's no percentage because they're not a business. As generally, when we have percentage rents, it's tied to sales.
I'm sorry, I mean, increase. It's a flat rate for
It's just
5 years?
It's a flat rate. Normally, we negotiate the entire value of the lease for that 5-year period. I present it to you per month, but to obtain the funding from the federal government, they need to provide an entire map of how that's going to look like, and generally we negotiate a flat fee per year with the agency.
And do they pay any utilities or any, or do we pay all of their utilities, or what's the utilities situation?
We pay the utilities, which is primarily just electricity, which is part of that, as part of the Waterfront Center building. We also have restaurant offices from the Anchor Rose, and also museum spaces that is pretty much formulated within their existing rent.
It was, what was the, it was $3 and something, what is it, per square foot?
Per square foot, $3.19.
Does that feel equivalent to other properties in the harbor for office space?
It's not market value based on the type of space, but again, considering the value they bring to the harbor and the way we negotiate with general services, we generally accept part of their terms.
I assume they have a budget and.
Yeah, and to Mr. Barris's point, this lease is very unique. It's not even our lease. We sign their lease agreement, so it's very rare, odd for the city. We have all of our leases with all of our tenants. This is essentially their lease terms that we sign.
So we don't have any room to negotiate on anything?
We do, but we could make a recommendation that we take this back to NOAA and recommend a rent increase if that's somewhere where you guys would like to go with it.
I mean, $3 a square foot with all the utilities included is pretty inexpensive, like anywhere in Santa Barbara, pretty much. And it seems like this is a tenant that probably has the means to pay at least market rate, and just having seen our budget and how our increases have gone up, and that we will be in this arrangement, the harbor will be in this arrangement for 5 years. I mean, I obviously don't want to, you know, I want to, I'm not sure if it's entirely, I'm wondering if there's room there, we could go back to them, and especially since it's a 5-year lease, if we're averaging it out, you know, and we can't adjust it, if we could be closer to 4 or even 4.5, it feels like that would be more close to market. I'll go along with whatever we decide.
And just for some perspective, it is a relatively small amount of money, so a 10% rent increase would bring us an extra, I mean, we're looking at less than $1,000 a year in revenue, and so absolutely, we agree with you. We talked about it before this meeting and said, you know, but they do provide a very good service for being here, not alone for dredging, but for future prospects of grant funding, FEMA funding, having that federal presence, so there is a benefit that we see, so.
I assume they would do that if the rent was 4 or 4.5 a square foot, but maybe I'm wrong.
We'll take your recommendation.
Commissioner Stanwyck?
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the end of the lease terms. You know, it's, you know, mid-March. When does the lease effectively end or terminate entirely?
Commissioner Stanwyck, Vice Chair, this lease takes effect January 1st of 2026.
Okay. So
So
we're looking at approving something that's in quite a few years from now. Okay.
That is correct. And again, this is the manner the federal government generally does business with us. It's been a practice, and it's not just with us in the city. It's state. They negotiate leases years in advance as part of their funding.
Okay, great, thanks. And what about, like, in terms of tenants in the harbor? Like, if they were to have their lease expire, is it usually, like if it's March, would it be typical for you guys to bring the lease to us and the end for it to be terminating like May, or just kind of wondering the time frame that we typically have compared to this?
Yeah, generally, we notify them if a lease is going to terminate. We notify them at least 6 months in advance.
Okay.
If we're planning to do an extension, if they have an option to a 5-year option, for example, we notify them 90 days prior to see if they want to exercise that option. Because if they don't, we need to go through an RFP process and get a new tenant. That is very rare. Generally, we are at capacity, and most tenants decide to stay.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson?
I'm curious, at one time, I remember reading in the old 1996 master plan that there was encouragement to, in fact, enter into lease negotiations with nonprofits and other organizations that dealt primarily with the ocean. And that was sort of an encouragement to do that. And then there was a paragraph that said, and to the extent possible, try to receive compensation. So I sort of had the NOAA lease in that category. Certainly don't have any problem going back to NOAA and saying, could you pay more? What do we do with other nonprofits? If we took an example of, say, the Chamber of Commerce or some of the other nonprofits that have a facility or have an office, is this lease commensurate with those, or is it considerably lower than what we normally charge a nonprofit?
Commissioner Nelson, they're at par. I mean, there'll be less than a 10% difference within the square footage. It depends on the size of the business. Yeah. I mean, we do have a lease space with the Chamber of Commerce for their visitor center, and part of that is it's a partnership that we have with the chamber, but they do pay a fairly market price.
Oh, they pay a market rate. That was my question. That's good.
Correct.
Do you have another question, Commissioner Cohen?
I do. So just so I understand this fully, the rent would be $1,505 until the year 2031. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, NOAA's budget is $6.3 billion. It feels like maybe they could pay market rate. I don't know. I won't belabor it.
Commissioner Cohen, just to add to your comment, just to give you some perspective, generally, we receive a request for rent reduction with this type of leases from NOAA. It's
All right, doesn't look like there's any further questions, and any public comment requested for this item?
Chair Stebbin, there's no hands raised and no speaker slip for this item.
All right, can you read the recommendation one more time, please?
Yes, the recommendation is that Harbor Commission recommends City Council approve a 5-year lease agreement with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for office space located at 113 Harbor Way at a rent of $1,505 per month.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move the Harbor Commission recommend City Council approve a 5-year lease agreement with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association for the office space located at 113 Harbor Way at a rent of $1,505 per month.
Do we have a second?
Second.
This is a motion by Commissioner McCray, seconded by Commissioner Nelson, to approve the staff recommendation for item 2. Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Ford,
Yes?
Commissioner McCray,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanwyck,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson is absent, Chair Steadman.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously with Commissioner Anderson absent.
All right, let's roll right into item number 3.
This is item 3, 5-year review of uses in the Harbor Commercial Zone. Recommendation, Harbor Commission A, review the extent and nature of the uses in the harbor and shoreline area of the Harbor Commercial Zone per Municipal Code Section 28.70.030. And B, recommend to the Planning Commission that the present mix of uses will ensure that the harbor remains a working harbor.
Chair Steadman, Commissioners, members of the public, hello again. Today I bring to you a 5-year review of uses in the Harbor Commercial Zone. This is a process that we do every 5 years, and we'll jump right in. So in our presentation outline, I'm going to go through several items here, including the municipal code, the local coastal plan policies, commercial fishing, slip uses, permitted mooring area, West Beach permits, catamaran beach permits, business activity permits. This is a good process we undertake every 5 years. It allows us to go back and look at everything we do, the mix of businesses, to look at our slips, the various uses. We look at what's going on in West Beach, Cat Beach, and see how they are being used in a nice and detailed way to, and notably explore how we are using the commercial zones within the harbor. As Nico stated, the municipal code has a number of requirements, and one of them is to continue to allow the harbor to remain a working harbor. This is something that we handle with great pride, which is reflected in our policies that you review, recommend, and often approve. The municipal code requires the Waterfront Department to review extent and nature of existing uses in the harbor commercial zone. From here, we go to the Planning Commission and present to them this very same presentation. Then finally, as a result, we send a copy of the report to the California Coastal Commission. Here you have a site plan of the Harbor Commercial Zone. This area is located just west, well, it starts just west of Harbor Way, kind of where the 90-minute parking is, across the Sailing Club Yard. And then south of Shoreline Drive, all the way to Stearns Wharf. So the 2019 local coastal plan identifies and defines ocean-dependent as primary uses, ocean-dependent and ocean-related and visitor serving as secondary uses, with the intent of ensuring the harbor remains a working harbor. This report reviews lease changes, slip uses, commercial fishing, and other harbor and waterfront-related uses. So when we go through the lease RFP, for example, generally we address any new RFP requests through this process in the same order. As far as ocean-dependent uses are concerned, there are uses that ensure the harbor will remain a working harbor. Uses range from boat mooring and marine-related and government facilities to boatyard repair facilities and services necessary for the ocean-dependent commercial activities. Currently, we have 20 ocean-dependent uses. They occupy interior space of just under 16,000 square feet and about 176,012 square feet of exterior space. In the last 5 years, we did not have any changes to this type of use. In 2019 was the last time we did this. As far as ocean-related uses, they are similar to ocean-dependent, but the idea here is that it helps it remains a working harbor, as well as providing a desirable environment for the public. Uses in this category range from boat sales to marine equipment shops, for example, ocean air electronics and marine services. Currently, there are 14 ocean-related uses. They occupy interior space of just over 17,000 square feet and occupied exterior space of just over 1,200 square feet. In the last 5 years, we did not have any changes in ocean-related uses. The third category is visitor serving uses, which is considered secondary. And ensuring the harbor remains a working harbor, as well as providing a desirable environment for the public. These are primarily consist of restaurants and retail stores and things of that nature. Currently, we have 13 visitor serving uses. They occupied about 21,000 square feet of interior space and just over 4,100 feet of exterior space. And also in the last 5 years, we have not had any changes to this type of use. So that was the harbor side of things. Now we move on. We switch over to the wharf. As you know, Stearns Wharf has been around since 1872, and it is the oldest working wooden wharf in California. It is 2,300 feet long and has an area of 3.8 acres, supported by just over 2,000 pilings. In 1980, the coastal development permit stated that this built area will be utilized primarily for visitor serving uses. And we've been doing just that ever since. We currently have 16 businesses located out on the wharf. They occupied almost 33,000 square feet space, interior space, and just shy of 14,000 square feet of interior space. And again, with this location, we have not had any changes in the last 5 years. In regards to leases, we have 26 harbor leases and 8 Stearns Wharf leases that will expire during the next 5 years. So these are leases that you will be reviewing and recommending to council. It is anticipated that most of the tenants will renew their leases, and during the leasing process, the department will continue to evaluate each business in accordance with the local coastal plan and the city leasing criteria. And here you have a list of the leases that were reviewed by the Harbor Commission and recommended to council for approval in the last 5 years, so since 2019. Shifting gears, from leases we move over to commercial fisheries, and we have a very robust commercial fishery. Here are the most valuable catch in order. This is from a 2022 report from Fish and Wildlife. Just to give you some numbers, sea urchins continue to be the chief contributor to the Santa Barbara's port landings at 1.1 million pounds, followed by rock crab at just 280,000 pounds. California spiny lobster at 279,000 pounds, followed by sablefish or black cod at 289,000 pounds. Notably, in this data, we've seen a drop-off in the urchin landings to the lowest levels in many years. And that was also a feature in the 2019 report. We're seeing that pattern. And then my understanding is that primarily one of the reasons for that decline, it has to do with environmental fluctuations that have depleted some of the island kelp, and which is the animal's primary food stock. In regards to value, while the landings have slightly decreased, the value of those landings have remained steady at about $14 million, equivalent to about $35 million overall economic benefits, considering the ancillary value that this industry brings to the state. That includes trucking firms, ice providers, retail stores, restaurants, and such. And this is a very important and essential a business to the community at large. Next to our slip uses, so we have a total of 1,143 slips. Of those, 983 are recreational slips. Currently, we have 83 used as liveaboards. We have anywhere between 60 and 82 being used by commercial fishing vessels, 20 to 30 as other commercial uses, which includes charter BAPs, lessees, and other service providers that use their personal slips as means to conduct business. And again, the BAP category falls within that. Also, we have 64 slips being used as miscellaneous, as part of a miscellaneous use, and that includes visitor vessels that come in, for example, on the weekends. And right now, they are about 14. Let's see here. Yeah, we have about 14 vessels and slips for federal and local agencies. Moving on east of the wharf, we have a mooring area implemented in 2006 with the goal to reduce the number of vessel groundings on each beach, and it's been quite successful. At the time, an area was selected and allowed people to moor year-round. They have robust ground tackle, which keeps its boats from dragging and going onto the beach. Generally, this tackle has to be inspected, and it's more reliable than the general type of tackle that mariners use on the free anchorage or regular anchorage per se. Overall, this program provides opportunity for individuals seeking mooring space in city waters who may not be able to be in the harbor either by lack of financial resources or just not being able to acquire a slip through the process that currently exists. Again, this is a successful program. Currently, there are 20 occupied moorings out of the 46. And the cost is $350 per year. Okay, next it's West Beach and the West Beach Permit Program. We allowed a maximum of 50 outrigger canoes, small sailboats, and rowing dories to be placed out on West Beach. Currently, a single vessel costs $350. To be placed on West Beach, just right by near the landing area. We also have 6 outrigger racks permits. Those are generally used by the outrigger clubs. We have a few of those that take advantage of this, and as many you might have seen just a couple of weeks ago, we had some folks showing up really early in the day and actually the night prior to obtain one of these permits, which lasts for an entire year. Right now, these permits are $1,800 per year, and they are available the second Friday of March. And for the viewing public, I was informed this morning that we still have some rack permits, so if anyone's interested, we do have some room. Okay, next is Catamaran Beach, also known as Cat Beach. And this is located just just east of the Ledbetter parking lot and west of the Harbor Main parking lot. So we have a maximum of 65 permits allowing owners to store their vessels on Ledbetter Beach. These permits are available between March and October, and they cost $300 per season per vessel. And currently, we have 29 catamarans 29 permits that have been issued out of the total 65 permits. And we've seen a decline over the years just because of the popularity of hobie cats. It's evolved. We have a lot of different recreational uses besides having cats. Folks are choosing to sell, stand-up paddleboard, paddling, you name it. Okay, moving on to our business activity permits. The program started back in 1972, establishing rules and guidelines for individuals who have no fixed place of business or lease space in the harbor, who wish to conduct marina-related business. This is a very successful program, and it's important, and an important component of the community. As you may recall, last year we went through a process in updating this the policy for the BAP. It was very well involved. It was involved with the public, stakeholders, and of course the commission and staff. So currently we have 67 businesses operating under this program. The cost is $50 per year for the service BAP and $300 for the service, for charter and the kayak BAP businesses. The BAP program allows the department to ensure individuals conduct business in the harbor with their valid business licenses, insurance, and this gives the department and the public and the boaters a peace of mind that the persons that are working on their vessels are trained and, most importantly, are insured. I believe this is the last item, and it's cruise ships. So they've been visiting Santa Barbara since 2002. Visits are generally during our non-peak business season. Visiting cruise ships carry between 450 on the more boutique type cruise ships to an average of 3,100 passengers. It has become an important component of the local economy over the years. Not just here at the waterfront, but also throughout the city. The program has a strong support from Santa Barbara Chamber of Commerce, Visit Santa Barbara in downtown Santa Barbara. The idea here is the ships stay only for a day, and then they leave, and then the idea being that the passengers will eventually come back and stay at our local hotels, use our restaurants, and select Santa Barbara as their visiting destination moving forward. Also, as you may know, through the cruise ship subcommittee, we have several discussions. So this is still an active item that will soon be going to City Council. And here, just to give you some broader history on the cruise ship visitations. So overall, from 2014 to 2019, they averaged about 23 visits per year, to that stop in 2021 with zero visitations. And then in 2022, we had a big jump up to 30 visits, and that was primarily due to pent-up demand, and that was experienced across the board, not just in the cruise ship industry. It was similar for our revenues in the department, restaurants, and many businesses throughout not just the city, but the state and the country. And then, as you can see here, for 2024 and 25, we have about 15 vessels of cruise ships scheduled. And then in 26, only 6 so far, but those are subject to change. But generally, they stay pretty steady as they prefer to select their port of call well in advance, as you can see here. So as we go through this process every 5 years, the conclusion is that we have come up that we have come up with is that our lease and slip management policies help preserve the working harbor, and they are in line with the local coastal plan with the current mix of uses, ensuring the Santa Barbara Harbor remains a working harbor. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner McCray.
Great report. Thank you very much for that. I have a few comments, which I will hold off until after we've heard from the public, but I do have a question about your presentation, and that is whether Stearns Wharf still is able to accommodate large ship visits at some portion of the wharf.
Commissioner McCray, Chair Stedman, we looked into that when the Navy was going to try and visit, and so we looked at the capabilities there. We had a structural engineer look at it. In short, yes, if the weather conditions are right, we have places we can tie down and accommodate that. Using the Navy ship as an example, they were very concerned if there was any wind at all, any swell. There's not a lot of depth there right now, and so when we last surveyed it, when the Navy was looking to visit, at some portions it was, 12, 14 feet at mean high tide, and so there really isn't a lot of depth, but I guess the answer is maybe.
That sounds great, 14 feet, if they can accommodate that draft. If the wharf still can tie them up, that's a great thing. And then there was a time where fish were actually landed there at the wharf itself, some small amounts, like directly to the fish market. Is that still the case?
Commissioner McCray, at Stearns Wharf? I believe no. Currently, we have the only vessels that tie up to the wharf. We have the Assured Seas, the Lititude, which they're allowed to do that via license and lease agreements. But it's not. We don't have any other services provided at that time. At this time,
I recall that there was a small hoist there at one point. It's no longer there or serviceable.
I recall that. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Nelson?
But to Merritt McCray's question, the seafood processing, fish hoist remains a primary harbor use, correct? I mean, so in terms of a primary activity, those activities would continue to be one even though they're no longer pursued there. So if we were talking about the mix of uses and things like that, we could in fact consider seafood processing or sales at Stearns Wharf.
It is something to consider.
And then, as you know, there's an outstanding recommendation by the Harbor Commission to analyze the possibility of creating more commercial fishing slips. And I know on Mike's agenda for upcoming meetings, commercial fishing policies exist, and I assume when that arises on our schedule, we'll deal with the question of more slips and why we can't and why we could. But I found it very interesting that when you talked about the slip uses, which by the way, was really a comprehensive analysis that I greatly appreciated, it focuses on the number of visitor slips. And for example, it talks about the fact that there were 44 unoccupied, that over the past 5 years, 16 of the 83 were used by commercial vessels, 23 by wreck vessels, and 44 were unoccupied. So it would sound to me from just a reading of that there are slips available. And where, in the reference to the 60 to 82 commercial fishing vessels that occupy slips, we know for a fact that only 45 of those are designated for commercial fishing. So at least half of those 82 that are used are basically not only paying, but they're in what we would normally consider to be recreational slips, correct?
Commissioner Nelson, I don't have the data to provide that, but I do know that also we have in that number, I have the Cuda Dock, Cabrillo Landing, and there's a section of Marina 3 as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think if you were to ask Jeanette, she'd say we got 45 slips. So if we have 45 designated slips, and I see something that says 44 unoccupied, that's encouraging. Because I don't think there's any requirement that we maintain 83 visitor slips. Is there a requirement that we keep 83 visitor slips available?
And just, there's no specific number on commercial fishing or visitor, but we do fill up. And so we quite often fill up. The harbor is full from time to time. So we try and balance that with our obligation to provide slips to whoever shows up. Any recreational slip can be assumed by a commercial fisherman through our normal process. They can transfer into it, they can use it. If they show up as a visitor slip and we have a slip available, they can use it at a very discounted rate as well. And so we try and balance that, but you look at the last couple of years, there are significant periods of time where we're full. All the slips are full. All visitor slips are full.
So what's the 44 were unoccupied mean then? How should I interpret that?
I'm not sure offhand, but
Yeah.
I believe that doesn't mean that they're unoccupied. We definitely do not have 44 slips that are unoccupied vacant. We have a
Okay.
crop that we use for visitor slips. At times, there are vacancies in those visitor slips. At times, we are full.
Okay,
Commissioner Nelson, just to clarify, that's visitor slips.
okay. And then the final question is, Kate, in her presentation on our first discussion on the strategic planning exercise, resulted in our receiving a reminder and receiving a copy of the local coastal plan, which I really appreciate receiving, because when you drill down on that plan, you see something I found to be unusual. And it says that the Harbor Commission shall review at least once a year the mix of uses, at least once a year. And then 2, the Harbor Commission shall prepare a report. It doesn't really say that even though all of our actions tend to be the Waterfront Department makes a recommendation to us and we approve it and then it goes to the council, this is one where the local coastal plan, at least the way it's written, says that it's a responsibility of the Harbor Commission. And I would argue a fairly high-level one, particularly if in the absence of a master plan, the only real the big planning process that drives us forward is the local coastal plan, and the Harbor Commission in the local coastal plan is asked to, at least once a year, take a look at this. That to me is significant, because it seems to me that the commission and the Coastal Commission, because this goes to the Coastal Commission, the Coastal Commission is basically, relying on or counting on the Harbor Commission to perform this role. Is there a discrepancy between the local coastal plan and the municipal code? Because the way the municipal code, as you presented it, would suggest that, you present to us and then it goes to the Planning Commission. To me, the local coastal plan tends to put our engagement, it's my opinion, in a higher level.
Chair Stedman and Commissioner Nelson, so this report looks back 5 years. So what I'm doing right now is just reporting how the state of the harbor in the last 5 years. If there's a need for the Harbor Commission to have an annual review of how we process leases, that's something that can be agendized and we can address. All I'm providing right here is not providing a recommendation to take action or anything. It's just to project what's happened for the last 5 years and our uses, any changes or any type of.
I really like what you just said. I completely agree with this report and its conclusions and intend to, support it and vote for it. But I do think that it would be appropriate for us at least once a year, we would take a look at those leases that are about to expire to do an assessment of whether or not we might consider to intervene before it falls into the typical renewal process. And that wouldn't be that difficult. If we only have, I think you estimated 33 leases or transactions in the next 5 years, would it be terribly difficult for the commission or a work group, strategic planning work group, or an individual to meet with the department and take a look at, once a year, all of the leases that are about to expire? And the reason I say that is that the way things happen now is our leases can be, 20, 25 years, and the policy is that if they're paying the rent, lease renewal happens pretty regularly. And all I'm saying is that maybe we take just a pause before it goes into the renewal policy and take a look, because there's a lot going on. The Waterfront Department and the city is a partner with us in the development of the Santa Barbara Ocean Collective. This partnership that's now involves the City College. What we're doing is, as a result of that and the contributions you've made, for example, to a USDA study, we had to do a survey of an assessment of needs for essentially the needs of a working harbor. And it was interesting. You might think that our assessment would simply focus on commercial fisheries, but the assessment that was done by CFSB, who's here tonight, did basically marine trades, the blue economy. And so what we're getting is a snapshot of not only what the needs of the commercial fishing fleet and the seafood industry need, but we're also finding out that there are needs by the boat builders, by the seafood processors. Many of the things that are listed here as primary uses. And so to keep up with these new developments and what's going on, I think it would be a good idea if we could figure out a way to schedule once a year a review of expiring leases, licenses. Licenses are also a category of uses, as well as mooring and slip policies. Once a year. If we could do that, I think that would heighten our engagement and send a signal not only to the Planning Commission, but also ultimately to the Coastal Commission, that we take that responsibility very seriously as harbor commissioners. So,
Commissioner Cohen?
Thank you for that presentation. I will agree with Commissioner Nelson that it would be great to have, I'm sorry, did you need more time?
No, I just said once a year is all.
I think it would be great to have a more involved conversation, and I also am looking forward to the conversation about slip use and if there's creative ways that we can look at expanding, working slips for working members of our harbor. My question's a little bit different, though. I know this is going to Planning Commission, and one of the things the Planning Commission is always interested in is homes and housing. And so it was interesting to see that in the uses, I mean, obviously you're looking at the commercial uses, but our harbor is home to a lot of people as well. And we have, looks like 83 liveaboards within our harbor. I'm just wondering if, given the housing situation that we have in our city, and if there has ever been a conversation around expanding the liveaboard slips that are available within the harbor, so that more members of our community would be able to have that option if they could, if they wanted to.
Commissioner Cohen, I'm not going to try and answer that fully, but I know historically it was an issue within the harbor, and so that's kind of what led to the creation of policy. The State Lands Commission and Coastal Commission was concerned, or State Lands Commission was concerned that the harbor wasn't meeting its needs being a working harbor or serving the recreational community. And so you look at all the documentation all the way back, our primary focus is working harbor, commercial activities, and recreational activities. There was some historic concern with that going the other way, becoming essentially housing. So that the state land's interpretation of what that space is for harbor uses. And so I think we would be in conflict with that if we were to start trying to push that the other way too much.
I understand that, but this document was also created with the intent that every 5 years we were going to look at it and we were going to make recommendations that are consistent with changes in our state. I mean, 5 years ago, you would not have probably seen some of the construction that you see in our town right now happening, but I think there's an acknowledgement that people need to have a place to live. And so that would be one piece of the puzzle that I would say that I think Planning Commission would be really happy to see that at least added into the presentation, that there are people living in our harbor, this is their home. And then also to maybe think about even adding 5 more homes into our community is impactful at this moment because there are so many people that need to have a home. And I'm sure you have people that are living in their, boats that are anchoring or that would, maybe have asked for a liveaboard. So I would just say that our entire state has changed over the last 5 years, and we should acknowledge that within this report, especially if it's going to Planning Commission. The other thought is that we have 253 acres at our disposal at the waterfront. I mean, has there ever been a consideration of adding housing somewhere else within those 252 acres? I don't know if that's feasible or not. I understand that we're looking at sea level rise, and we probably don't want to do new construction somewhere. But I just wonder if that's ever been a consideration. This is going to Planning Commission. I would think that they would want to know that we at least looked into the feasibility of those items.
Commissioner Ford?
Thanks. I would just add on that in my experience in a few different harbors that the number that's set is 10%. So that would increase. If we've got 983, it'd be another 10 or so. Just a good guideline, I think, to go by. I do think that there's a lot of thought that goes into increasing that number just because there can be a lot of overuse and change the environment entirely. I just wanted to ask about process a little bit. So this is a wonderful, comprehensive memo for us. And so what's the next step? What do you do when you go to the Planning Commission? Is there a separate form that you use, or basically just say that eventually we will have voted to send it on?
Commissioner Ford, we're presenting this to the Planning Commission basically as is right now, unless you, as a commission, have a recommendation. Again, we're looking back at 5 years, just reporting on what we've done over the last 5 years. As Commissioner Nelson mentioned, if there's a desire by the commission to make adjustments or recommend changes to this process, looking ahead, that is something that we could do. Right now, the plan is to report this information to the commission just on what has happened over the last five years.
Perfect, thanks.
Yes, Vice Chair?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the report, Caesar. That was really super helpful. And I agree with everything on the report. I also want to just reiterate my support for one of the comments that Commissioner Nelson made, just regarding the yearly review by the Strategic Planning Commission, or by the Strategic Planning Work Group. Because I think it's really important. And I know we have a handful of visitor-serving places on the wharf, and some of them are actually not super popular with the public, and it's not too easy to find out which ones those are. You just go to Yelp or Google and you would see some of the reviews. And a 2.7 or a 2.9 out of 5 is, that's a failing grade. And I know that if it's a place that's new, or if it's maybe some of these places I know are renovating, that's totally fine. But when I look at the visitor serving uses and what it's trying to do, providing a desirable environment to the public, well, can we really say that it's providing that service to the public if the public is giving it a failing grade? And so I know a lot of these places have a amazing location. They have a great resource because their resource for their location is the waterfront that's on the wharf. And I just think that going forward, I think it'd be really responsible for us to do this review yearly. I think the commission would be probably a little bit more prepared to discuss and kind of collaborate and talk through some of these leases because of that. And yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with the mix of everything in this report, but yeah, at least the yearly review, I think, will prepare the commission a little bit better to do some kind of action to make any kind of positive changes to that, whether it be sending it to the request for proposal. But really, I think it's a responsible thing to do in the best interest of the public. So, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vice Chair, in your comments. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Nelson.
I want to address Commissioner Cohen's comments about housing, which it's hard to argue with. We ought to take a look at that, particularly given the space that we have. However, the Planning Commission's review of this is not independent. It is coupled. The reason the Planning Commission is reviewing this is because the Coastal Commission wants to hear from the Planning Commission that the Harbor Commission has accurately assessed the mix of uses that guarantee a working harbor. That's the role, as I understand it, of the Planning Commission. It's essentially to take a look at our report and then basically say that they agree with us. And if they agree with us on the mix of uses, then they say that the mix of uses to the Planning Commission, they say that the uses are consistent with a working harbor. And that we need to be prepared for that line of questioning and do the analysis, but I think the primary mission or goal of the report is the working harbor. So.
All right, any further comments? Public?
Yes, Chair Stedman, we do have one speaker slip that was submitted, Kim Selko. And just a reminder to everyone who is online, if you do wish to speak, please make sure you raise your hand in the Zoom platform. So our one speaker slip is Kim Selko.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Chair Stedman and commissioners and waterfront staff. I also really appreciated this report. It was really comprehensive and gives great perspective. I really appreciated the dialogue you just had. It represents a lot of the views of the commercial fishermen of Santa Barbara, of which I represent. And I wanted to just sort of acknowledge and record that, even though our working waterfront does function very well and is managed well, that, there's still a lot of need and there's a lot of challenge that we need to address with supporting the working waterfront uses and the allocation of space. As you all know, this is such a big problem. We've been working on it for decades to find more space for boat and gear storage adjacent to the harbor to support our fishing community. It's really the #1 bottleneck to the survival of fisheries, to new entrants coming in, to seeing more landings because the fishermen can access the waters and also slips, as you just discussed. That's a big problem as well. We do need more commercial fishing slips. That's a big bottleneck to the health of our working harbor. The city established a subcommittee, the commercial fishing subcommittee, that's not a work group, in order to address these problems. And it all comes back to this leasing policy and how we're going to be more proactive. We've set up a beautiful collaboration with the Santa Barbara City College to find some space on their campus to service some of these needs for boat and gear storage that the harbor should be providing but can't at this point. There's no guarantee that that's going to come to fruition. The space available is very small. It's not going to be adequate no matter whether it's built out the way we'd like or not. That all just ties into the fact that we do really, even though we can say, yes, this working waterfront is being properly supported and, things are being managed quite well, it doesn't alleviate the need to still acknowledge that there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And I also want to just echo Commissioner Stanowic's comment about restaurants and visitor serving uses. The number one thing that folks want to do when they come to a seaside town is go to a great local restaurant that has great local seafood.
And Dr. Sulko, can you
I will wrap this up, I'm sorry,
come to a
but I do
conclusion,
want to
please?
make one more point.
Thank you.
And I think that, we do, it's the holy grail to really boost visitor economy, to have that functioning really well, that we have great restaurants in the waterfront serving local seafood. And I think, this process is integral to making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Chair Stedman.
All right, very well. Any other questions from my fellow commissioners?
I have a comment, a couple of them. First of all, I think it's important to note that we have the Marine Safety Detachment of the U.S. Coast Guard located here. I think that's a great asset for them and for us to have those two Coast Guardsmen there that inspect vessels here locally and up and down the coast. That's huge. And of course, having the cutter here is a huge thing, and that kind of recognition, I think, should be made as well. I noticed that our most lucrative and productive fisheries here are all fisheries that depend on really high-quality water within our harbors, including the urchins, which are sometimes hung off, crabs, which are frequently hung off, and occasionally lobster. I think urchins are often wetted instead of hung, but we have a great water quality monitoring program in the harbor, and I love hearing all about the results each year. That's what I have, and I'm ready with a motion.
Very, very well. And what's your motion?
I recommend that to the Planning Commission, that the present mix of uses will ensure that the harbor remains a working harbor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Very well. Nico?
This is a motion by Commissioner McCray, seconded by Commissioner Ford, to approve the staff recommendation as described in Agenda Item 3. Commissioner Ford?
Aye.
Commissioner McCray?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stanwyck?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson is absent. Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
And Chair Stedman.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously with Commissioner Anderson absent.
All right. We are ready for item number 4.
All right, Chair Stedman, Commissioners, thank you for that. That was a great discussion. I think that was the main course. So, my item in front of you today. So I just wanted to provide a brief update on Council's process with updating their advisory group guidelines. I know this has been a topic of discussion at the Harbor Commission level at a number of past meetings. So I just wanted to circle back and provide an update to the Commission. Next slide. So as you all know, the city has over 40 various boards and commissions that report to council. In 2013, the city administration and city council created the guidelines for City of Santa Barbara advisory groups, and so this was done under Resolution 13006. So the intent of this resolution was really to provide consistency with the way the various boards and commissions operate. Most recently, over the last several months, city administrator and council have worked to revise these 2013 guidelines. Council originally reviewed updates to this document on August 1st, 2023, and then most recently, just a few weeks ago, March 12th, 2024, City Council reviewed and approved the final guidelines under Resolution 24021. Next slide. So just for our clarification, I wanted to go over some of the notable changes from the 2013 version to 2024. The new guidelines had some clarifying language on council authority for forming subcommittees. I know we've talked about it a lot. There's clarifying language on how agendas are set, so that agendas are set by staff in consultation with the chair and vice chair. It clarifies council process for appointing and creating liaisons, so this is really a council action and doesn't occur at the board and commission level. And then included some language on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Clarifies that all meeting minutes should be action meeting minutes across boards and commissions, and made some clerical and verbiage updates, and then confirmed that this resolution is the overarching governing document for advisory groups. Next slide. So really the application to Harbor Commission is it solidifies our two governing documents. So as a charter board, we fall under language in the SB Charter. So that's Article 8, Section 811. We are one of the charter board and commissions. And so now, additionally, Harbor Commission will follow these revised guidelines as put in place by council under Resolution 24021. We did attach a copy of the draft or the final guidelines to the staff report, so you guys have those as well, and those have been made available to city staff and all boards and commissions. Next slide. And with that, I'll turn it back to the commission or take any questions.
No, yes, Commissioner McCray.
Yes. Could you elaborate on the process for getting items put on the agenda that are brought forward by members of a board or commission?
Yeah, so staff is responsible for putting together the agenda and setting that agenda. We will do so at taking requests from Harbor Commission, the public, whatever there is that is prioritizing. We really try and manage our year like we did at the priority setting workshop, so we can focus it and spend the energy and not kind of jump around. But if an individual Harbor Commissioner had something of interest, they could bring that to staff. Staff would then consult with the chair and vice chair, determine if it is appropriate, timely, within the purview of the Harbor Commission, a current priority. If so, it would be agendized.
Thank you very much for that.
Yes, Commissioner Nelson.
My question is, there obviously are differences between commissions, advisory committees that were established by charter and those that were established, presumably by council action. So I am assuming that these revisions will not require a charter amendment. So anything that's a power and duty of the Harbor Commission as spelled out in the charter remains.
Commissioner, that's how I would understand it as well.
Well, good. Any other questions? Commissioner Cohen, I see your thumb loaded.
I mean, I would just say that obviously there are some changes here, and I've had some concerns. We are an enterprise fund, and as such, there are things that come to the commission that maybe are not specifically called out that they need to come to the commission, but I would just hope that we can all work together to make sure that those things are addressed on agendas when appropriate. So that's all.
Yes, Commissioner Ford.
Thanks. I would only just underscore that. I totally agree. I think it's also, I'm just sharing with the five of you, that I think it's appropriate if during a meeting something is really a pressing issue, that any commissioner could say something about wanting something on an agenda, understanding that the Waterfront Department is in charge of the final product, but I hope we all feel like we could bring it up in meetings at any time.
Yes, and remember, there's a spot at the end of the agenda for communications, just general. And actually, your predecessor took great advantage of that with written, comments, and so that's an open opportunity for you. Any other questions? All righty. I guess we're ready for the department update.
All right, moving along. We'll be brief tonight. I only have a couple of items. The first being just another reiteration. This has gone out by email. We've mentioned to you guys by email, but just to clarify with the public and the Harbor Commission. So we're going to be postponing the Ledbetter Beach restroom project while we kind of re-envision and redesign. This was really the loudly heard comments from the public, and so it kind of a chance to step back. So over the coming months and year, we'll engage with stakeholders, look into alternate design options, really find a solution that kind of meets all the needs, the maintenance issues, security, ADA, meets all the stakeholder needs as well. We can commit an appropriate amount of funding at a future date. It's kind of hard to do that now before we design and re-envision it, but we'll commit funding at a future date once we have a revised scope and scale. I know some recent comments that were received by email indicated an interest in doing just the ADA upgrades. That's really tough to do that, so it's kind of a project in totality, and so to sort of piecemeal it over that is a little bit inefficient. It would most definitely cost more. Even if it does break down to us just doing the ADA portion, we'd have to redesign and kind of resubmit plans. These are things that are permitted and planned, so regardless, we need to take a step back, and we believe the best approach is to just pause, redesign, and then revisit the funding at a future date. Next slide. And then my last item is just a tentative look at some items for future meetings. Nice to kind of go over this to give both the commission and the public stuff that's on our radar. A lot of this came from our January priority setting workshop. So one of the big top priorities was a discussion on vessel insurance policy. We talked about this a couple years back, and it's kind of sat as is. So we don't currently require vessel insurance in the harbor, and so this would really be a discussion, a sort of first chat at looking at pros and cons, other harbors, and a chance to discuss and answer questions. We're planning to do that at our April meeting. Mr. Aldridge is putting together a presentation right now, looking at some neighboring harbors, and so just kind of bringing as much information to you all as we can on the topic. Of course, we've got our FY25 budget review, so we're going to have a special meeting on April 24th, and then we'll likely review this again at our May meeting, so a couple cracks at that. Anchorage and mooring policy discussion. We've had a couple talks about this, hoping to further discuss our current anchorage and mooring policy and really look at some potential improvements there. Slip policy discussion, always there, so discussion on possible updates, improvements to slip policy. And as Commissioner Nelson mentioned, we do owe you a response on commercial fishing and kind of a comprehensive look on what it would take to make more commercial fishing slips available, what that looks like. I think we have that scheduled for our June meeting to kind of go over that policy and provide some material and information to you all. And then we're still hoping to line up some speakers from State Lands Commission, some neighboring harbors, either Ventura or Channel Islands, and the SB Chamber of Commerce. So a little preview of what we're hoping to get on the agendas to come. And I'll pass that back to the commission.
Very succinct, thank you. All right, so Commissioner Ford, this is the item where actually you can say anything you want.
Yes, I understand. I just wanted to say what I said. Understanding that it doesn't quite say that in those guidelines, so
Right.
I just wanted to state it. I have nothing to add at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else on the commission? Vice Chair?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment just to the commission. Just looking at those upcoming Harbor Commission topics, the vessel insurance policy and anchorage and mooring policy, just wanted to let it be known that we had a really good, robust discussion back in May 2022. There was a motion by the Harbor Commission to direct staff to look further into requirements of vessel insurance in Santa Barbara. So I know that I'm going to go back and kind of just look at that meeting, review the notes from it. I know it'll answer a lot of my questions, probably answer a lot of our questions collectively as a commission, but really just in the effort to maximize time and efficiency in the next meeting. So it's out there. Thanks.
Great point, Vice Chair. Commissioner McCray?
Yes. First, I'll turn my mic on. Speaking of mic, I want to thank you for a very wise decision with respect to the Ledbetter Beach bathroom situation, changing area. I think, I really appreciate the thought that went into that and your ultimate decision. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Cohen?
I'm sorry, I meant to comment on the guest speakers that were coming up, and I'm going to continue to try to get a speaker on ocean acidification. I'm just going back through our priority workshop, and I noticed that you had put in there a guest speaker from Ventura Channel Islands Harbor, which was actually further down the list than my ocean acidification request. Since we're a quarter of the way into the year, I just would say that if you're having trouble getting one of those speakers, I'm happy to help you find a speaker on ocean acidification. I think I actually sent you a few suggestions at one point. I just feel like that would be something that would be valuable for all of us to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other communications?
Are we to communications yet?
Staff, any general communications?
No, we're all clear.
Commissioner Craig?
Yeah. I've been hearing through the grapevine that there is some change in the wind with respect to how our harbor patrol is actually armed. Can you describe that? What's in the works and why? And
Yeah, Commissioner McCraig, again, this is definitely not an agendized topic, and so I don't want to get into it now, but there is some SB2, which is requiring more requirements for law enforcement officers, and so we're working through that all right now. And we can definitely bring it to you at a future meeting. We're planning to kind of release that, but it's definitely not on the agenda for tonight to discuss.
thank you.
I just have one thing to say. I just wanted to say thank you to the Waterfront for sending out that email about upcoming council events. I know that's something we requested, so thank you for doing that. I'm looking forward to April 9th. I saw that they're possibly going to be discussing the cruise ship and that all the work that was done on that. So thanks for sending that out. That was very helpful.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. I think the communications coming out of the Waterfront have been pretty regular and pertinent, so thank you very much. All right, one final opportunity. Nathan, anything you want to? Looking good. Okay. All right, is there a motion for adjournment? So moved. All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned.